Welcome to the True Wealth Investors Real Estate Podcast. Creative investing strategies to help you build true wealth. I'm your host, Chad Harris. Normally I have Shay help me with that, but all right. So our two guest speakers tonight are GDREIA members, Jim Swanson and Scott Wadamaniak. I probably butchered that really badly. Scott, you want to tell me how it's pronounced?
Watamanuk. Watamanuk.
Watamanuk. All right. Sorry about that. Okay.
That's very common. I don't stress it.
Okay. So I've known Jim and Scott for a long time, and we've worked together. They both have gone through my coaching program on how to raise private money for your deals, and I've worked with Jim one-on-one for a while on how to grow his real estate business. And I thought it'd be a good idea to have them on to share what they're doing and how they're building their business because like a lot of you, and there's a whole bunch of other GDREIA members that I hear talk about kind of the frustration of, I want to do this kind of deal, but I don't have any money, and so I can't get into the deal I want to get into. And my belief is that really is a lack of knowledge or a lack of belief, because if we really commit to doing deals even without our own money, we can learn techniques to do deals where it doesn't require any of our own money. I mean, I'm proof of that because I didn't have any money when I started, right? And still to this day don't use my own money for new purchases just because I think that's a better model. But I really wanted to have Jim and Scott on, just to be an example, to share an example of how to do deals without having to have your own money in the deal. And sometimes we have, let's say you go to the national conference and you hear these speakers from all over the country, or maybe, even Kurt last month, maybe you can dismiss it in your head and say, oh, well, he's in Lancaster, Ohio. It must be different than Ohio. All right. Well, now we have two guys who are GDREIA members and investing in Dayton, Ohio. And so just wanted to have them be able to share an example of how to do it, because it is very possible. All right. So Jim and Scott, I will let you guys go ahead with, your introduction, who you are, how you're connected, and what your business is. All right.
Go ahead, Scott. Yeah.
All right. So I'm Scott Watamanuk, and do buy and hold. That's what we're doing. Jim is actually my son-in-law, so we are partners in this. And we started this, and we became so we started this idea to get to do this, but before we wanted to we needed to learn before we just started doing things. And so we Jim has a job where he can listen to books on tape. So he's listened to a lot of investing books. He has then said, oh, you should do this or read this. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I'm landlording I can't remember.
Landlording on autopilot.
On autopilot, yeah. But we also then joined GDREIA, and learned lots of things there, met lots of people,
And
know, people.
how would you describe, like, what's your business vision? What do you guys want to build? Or what types of deals do you want to do?
Build an empire.
Build an empire. Yeah, I like it.
Until it strikes back, but well, you can answer that one, Jim.
Well, I think I would say, you know, I guess for myself, I kind of have a vision of owning, 100 or more properties. I guess, we have little short-term goals in the meantime. I have a goal of backing out of my current job in about 2 years, not fully, but going maybe down to part-time, where I can spend more time on real estate. So at that point, we kind of calculated, okay, how many properties do we need in order to sustain that? So, and having, we're hoping here, if we get 2 more properties, our goal is to hire a virtual assistant to be able to kind of run the day-to-day stuff, looking at our property management software and answering questions that people have. And we are going to be adding or building a operating manual, so that way, if that assistant leaves or anything like that, we have a manual that the next assistant can just follow and jump right in and be able to do the job. So yeah, I mean, so in the next 2 years, our goal is to have 15 properties, to be able to sustain that, and then just building from there.
Awesome. Okay. And so kind of well, were there any questions? We'll have this more like a discussion tonight if that works. Or any questions from you guys right off the bat on kind of what they're trying to build, or we can go right into the deal. If you guys have a question, throw your hand up, or you can drop it in the chat and I'll ask it for you. All right. Okay. So Jim and Scott, walk us through, I don't know how many deals you want to talk about, but a specific deal, how you found it, how the offer process went, how you funded it, like, what the process has been like.
Well, so the very first property that I got, I lived in. So this is kind of like Kimberly. This is kind of following what you are looking to do. I had a vision. I mean, I've always had rental property on the back of my mind. So when I went to grad school at UD, I said, you know what, I'm not going to throw my money away on rent. I bought a property. And then I did what was called house hacking, and I rented rooms out to classmates. And at one point, I was living there for basically free. And I had roommates paying that enough to cover my mortgage and utilities. I think I paid basically like $50 a month at the end, at the end of the day. So I think, Kimberly, you're looking at buying another residential home and then turning your house into a rental home. I think that's a great way to get started. And some people, if you listen to what's that? Bigger Pockets. If you listen to Bigger Pockets podcast, there's a lot of podcasts on that. But as we went along, and Scott and I started talking about buying rental property, as he mentioned, we joined GDREIA to learn and all that kind of stuff. But the very first property that we bought was from a wholesaler, and we bought for $15,000. We had to pay the wholesaler $3,000, so that was 18, and then closing costs Scott would know better on this than me, but
About 1,500.
1,500, yeah. So we were all in for about 19.5. That whole process, the house, we bought that, when did we buy that? June
of 23. Yeah.
June of 23, yeah.
Well, and real quick, was it a typical wholesaler? I don't remember specifically. Did they have it under contract, or was this the?
Yes, no, this one, yes.
Okay.
This is the wholesaler that sends me stuff that's not under contract, which is, yeah. But this was under contract. He had it. It was vacant for 12 years. The owner's mom passed away and he did nothing with the house. And I mean, it was a lot of trash out. This lady had a lot of stuff, and it had been ransacked, and just everything piled. Like, we never saw that. We didn't know what the floor looked like, because it was just completely covered. And all the copper pipes cut out. And, you know, it probably, if we didn't buy it, they might have condemned it. I don't know. But our first contractor was okay at first, but then he kind of fell off the face of the earth. So we had to find a new contractor. So it took a long time to rehab.
Yeah.
It is now like pretty much done, and it is listed for rent. So we have a few things that we're kind of dealing with, but it is listed for rent. So that was our first one. Our first one was a major rehab, and it just took a lot, and we learned a lot, and we kind of like jumped into it thinking, you know, no matter what you do, no matter how much you learn, you're never going to learn as much as you do by just doing a deal. And you just have to kind of jump in and do a deal. I mean, you try to minimize those mistakes as much as possible, but you just have to jump in and do the deal. You know, we've since then, so that one, well, we purchased that one using Scott's HELOC. So I know somebody mentioned using a HELOC.
Right.
We purchased that one using a HELOC. We refinanced it in March. Was it March?
February.
March. What?
I think it was February.
Oh, was it February? Okay, so we refinanced. It wasn't done, obviously done yet, but we refinanced with a private lender on that one. So we went up to 80% loan to value, because of some unforeseen. Our goal was 70% loan to value, but we ended up going up to 80% loan to value just because of some unforeseen things that costed a little bit more. So you know, that private lender understood that he's going to make his money no matter what, whether it's rented or not. So, and he's local. He's driven by the house a few times. So.
And what was that process like? Because I think that was maybe your first private lender or your first local private lender. I forget.
Yeah, I was the first local private lender.
Okay. And
we had bought another house with a private lender where it was a direct. We had the private lender set up, and when we closed on the house, the private lender became the lien holder. It was like direct. So,
but I remember so this house, the major rehab, that's on Bolton Street.
Bolton.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And I remember with that private lender, because it had been such a long rehab and it wasn't completed, when the private lender said they were interested, but they wanted to see the property first, there was a little bit of nervousness, like, oh no, they want to inspect the property.
Yeah.
How did that work out? What was their inspection like, and what was their response?
Well, it ended up being that they drove past the house. They didn't even end up going in.
Yeah.
They just drove past the house. They were satisfied with the area. They're satisfied with the outside of the house. And that was even before we had done a lot of the stuff to the outside of the house. I mean, we had the roof redone and we had new windows in there, but I mean, even after we drove by, we had some of the windows kind of reflashed and stuff like that. So, I mean, it looks much better now, but he felt fine with it. He didn't actually do a walkthrough. So I was a little nervous. I
Mhm.
talked to the contractor. I was like, we need to make sure this is cleaned up as best as we can. I know you're working in here, but try not to leave stuff just laying around. We want to like make it look neat and tidy, and um, and not just a bomb went off with construction material.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really think that's a common thing with working with private lenders where especially when we're not super confident raising money, we kind of feel like if they see this house that we're working on, they're going to see everything wrong with it. But in reality, every lender that has lent me money and actually driven by the property, which is really rare. Normally they just see some pictures and they're okay with it, but when they drive by, they're happy,
Mhm.
they know their investment or their loan is very low compared to the value of a house, and so they're thrilled to be involved. So I'm glad that
Right.
was your experience too.
Yeah, I think the experience with that lender was very good. That was it was one where both Jim and I, um, after uh, Jim made initial contact, both Jim and I met with them and at their house and talked about stuff and then talked about the deal and he's I think another thing that might have made Jim more nervous than me, but this investor was an engineer and he was looking at numbers and he knew all the numbers. and um it was surprising. One of the things he said, like, I think he contacted Jim later, like, do you know that your paperwork says that, if uh um if you don't pay that we get to take the house, we get to foreclose. We said, yes, that's the way it is. It's so so it was interesting. Um I don't think he knew what to expect with this sort of private lending, right? He had not done it before. And he was surprised that all the protections were to protect the lender, not to
Mhm.
protect us, right? And that quite frankly, I think that was that made me feel good that you know that 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 the documents that we were using were reflecting the what basically what we tell investors.
Yeah, yeah, that's great, and it has to be reassuring that lender that you're talking to that is like the most detail oriented, and he's picking through the legal documents and running through the numbers, that he's really satisfied, right?
Yeah,
If he looks into everything and is really satisfied, then any other lender will be satisfied. So.
right.
Okay, so that house is that is listed for rent now. How much is it listed for rent for? Or what's the listed rent on that?
1,075 right now.
Okay. And what's for ballpark numbers for everybody, what's the ARV on that house now? Which that house looks amazing. The listing
Uh,
pictures,
yeah,
because I walked through it in the beginning and it's like,
Yeah.
mouse. Really good.
yeah.
Yeah.
ARV is 95.
Okay. And what was the total investment amount, and what did you end up raising from a private lender? If you're okay sharing all that.
72.
72. Okay.
Yeah, that's the private lender, and I think that about covers.
Okay. So that's awesome. So 72, you are, is that right at like 75% loan to
Something
value?
very close.
Close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really close to 75% loan to value. Your lender's thrilled. And you're talking about how this was a massive rehab, didn't go the way you planned,
Mhm.
took longer than you thought, like ran into all kinds of headache. We'll say experienced many learning experiences, right? Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
challenges along the way, and still ended up with the private lender covering your expenses. That's really awesome. And so then with this deal, you still got 23,000 in equity ballpark, right?
Mhm.
Awesome. Would you guys do that deal again?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. Scott was Scott.
Well, I tell you, well, there were, and this is just, there were things that came up. I mean, so full rehabs are just a lot of work. I mean, that's the bottom line. They're a lot of work. And one of the things, so this house was built in 1885, and there were just some things that I don't think I don't think I had fully digested in looking at. So, for example, it had rather bizarre heating, and we put in a forced air furnace, but there was no ductwork. So now it became okay. And it's 2 stories. How do we get ductwork up there? How are we going to do that? So I mean, there was just some interesting sort of things that we had to deal with that uh, you know, just not that they were not it was a surprise, but it was like, you know, once we had to kind of come up with solutions, it was like, oh gosh, we got to do something interesting here. So,
Yeah. Okay, so a question from, or a couple questions from Kenny were, how long did the rehab take, and what were the terms with the private lender?
well, I mean, the rehab literally took, well, it depends on how you count. Depends on how you count. Active working, it's probably took about, you know, a year of things going on. I mean, things that we didn't have, for example, we didn't have several crews of people, right? That would have been a speed up having uh, multiple crews. um, and one of the things that we were not uh, sort of set up is when we purchased that, um, we had the roof done very quickly after we bought it because we wanted to make sure that we didn't incur any damage from a bad roof, right? We wanted to stop any damage that was happening. But then we didn't have in our back pocket, we didn't have names of contractors. And um, and that took a bit of time, right? Um, and to have good ones that uh, sort of do the work well. It's tough to get, and now we're learning. We need to have old school Rolodex of these people to to call on. So the rehab certainly took longer than we had wanted, and then various things came into play and extended that.
I
Uh,
think the lessons you've learned though with managing contractors and hiring contractors and um, looking at properties and what things actually cost. I mean, any new project is going to be vastly better just because of that whole learning process.
Right. And I think, and this one, taught us a lot of lessons.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
You guys
we
didn't start with an easy one, that's
no,
for
we got a
sure.
whole class on this from the back. So
Okay, and his other question was, what were the
terms,
terms with your private lender?
right? Jim, I'll let you answer that one.
Okay. Private lender was, we did 3 years at 6% interest, and our payments are interest only. So that way his investment stays in, just like any other investment that someone has. You want to just keep your money into it and making money out of it. So we just pay him monthly 6% of the um, 72,000, obviously 6% spread over 12 months. And then, so his contract will expire in 3 years. So, I mean, obviously it's someone we know, so it's someone that we stay in contact with, but, at our plan is at about 2.5 years, we will, discuss his loan with us and see if he wants to continue the investment. And if he does, then we'll just see how long he wants to sign on for again, and keep it going. So hopefully he wants to stay on.
Right.
If he doesn't, though, then that gives us time to find another private investor or figure out another avenue to basically pay him out and have another loan
Right.
lien on the property.
And of course, we are perfectly happy if he wants to invest more.
Yes.
So
There you go.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that
It's,
will
yeah, and that is really a good point. I know I've told you guys, but for everybody else, when I started, I had a whole bunch of private lenders with smaller amounts. And then over time, I paid off some, and others just kept lending more money as they kept getting their monthly check and were happy and trusted me. And so then you end up with just a few lenders who lend you a lot of money. So, and that's
right.
it seems to me that's just naturally how private lenders like to do things. They want to do one investment and see how it goes and see what you're like. And then once you demonstrate that you're professional and responsible and do what you say you're going to do, then they follow with more. So
Yeah, and I think we're the people that we're talking to about investing are this is their first experience too, right? So just as you said, I mean they they don't know what to expect, and but I think when they get a check every month, and Jim is we're sending out try to send out sort of monthly updates to our lenders, including as if we're doing rehabbing, we're showing pictures of the rehab and showing progress, and I'm also talking about any new properties that either we are making offers on or have already secured, to demonstrate that this is a business, and this is continuing. This is not just sort of stagnant.
yeah, awesome. That's a really good thing to do. And Kenny, great questions. Anybody else, feel free to throw your questions in there. Okay, Kimberly had a question. Was the private lender someone you already knew and had built a relationship, or how did you find them?
Yes. It's someone who I had known, gosh, I don't, probably I probably have known known him for 10 years or more. Just as uh, actually his wife is more friends with my wife, and I got to know him um, sort of a secondhand. Um, and so he was someone we knew, and so it wasn't a stranger. He wasn't a stranger.
I'm going to bet, though, he's also not somebody who you would have gone out and just asked for $72,000, right? It
Yeah.
Yeah,
was so the Kimberly, the part of the 6 weeks of group coaching that goes with the course on how to raise private money that I do, a lot of that is how to kind of initiate those conversations, because most people, like Scott was saying, don't know they can be a lender in your real estate business. They don't understand that, how they could lend money and have all the benefits that a bank gets. And so we need to figure out how to initiate those conversations so that we can explain to them how they can do that. So that is that kind of how that conversation came about. Um, or how did that initial conversation start? If they're not a person that you would just walk over and ask for
right.
72 grand like a cup of sugar, right? How did you have that first conversation?
I think I was Jim,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
interesting
I think
because
he actually borrowed one of my trailers for something, and we got talking about um, what Scott and I are doing. I was kind of letting him know that we have an opportunity for other people to invest with us, and he kind of perked up a little bit, and I was like, well, we can, if you want, if you don't mind, Scott and I can come over and meet with you and your wife and tell you about uh, what we're doing and see if it meets your investing and financial goals. And so he was agreeable to the meeting. Um, I think the setting setting the meeting is kind of like, for me, the hardest part. Getting people to understand that we have an opportunity for you and that we're not asking for money. I'm not asking for money. This is purely an opportunity for someone else to invest in something that is backed by a piece of real estate. And with having conversations with people, when you're meeting with them, the I the easiest thing to remind them of how it kind of works is just keep saying it's like you're the bank, right? Like, because people understand that. Most people have gone to a bank and gotten a loan, maybe a home loan or something like that, and it's like, well, you know banks have the money, right? And if you want have money, be like a bank and you know
Yeah,
loan
make
on
money,
properties.
make money.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome. Banks don't do risky things, right? Banks don't
That's
make risky investments, and
right,
yeah, sure.
right. I think another part of that piece is also explaining to the investors how we purchase properties. That is, the fact that we're not going on the MLS and paying you know top market value. Right? That's not the way we're buying properties. We're buying properties so that when we buy them, there's already equity
Yeah,
in them. And so, again, it's not just that they're the bank and their investment is backed by some property. It's backed by property that we can sell we can sell, and you're not we won't be losing.
awesome. All right, so that's a good segue. I see your question, Georgia. We'll get to your question. Anybody else with questions, throw them in the chat and we'll get to it. But that's a really good segue to the next house you bought, because that was like a completely, I mean, almost like a completely opposite deal, really.
Yeah.
So what was the process on the next house you purchased? How did you find the house? What was the offer process like? All of that.
Well,
Jim?
that one was another one. Well, we got that one off of the MLS. So the first one was a wholesaler. The second one was off of the MLS, and we it was one that a tenant was already in there paying, which they were paying almost full market value, or paying what rents are in that area near. It was maybe $50 or $100 less than what when I did an analysis on the rental market in that area. So, which is actually a little surprising, because most of the houses we look at off of the MLS, it'll list that a tenant is already in there and the tenant's paying $500, but they want, 100,000 for the house. It's like, well, that's not going to sustain anything. But
Hmm.
anyways, so there was already a tenant in the house. I can't remember off the top of my head what they were asking. I think they were asking 80 something thousand.
85 or something.
85, yeah. We offered, based on my numbers, we could offer about 72,000. They came back at, I believe it was
75.
75. Yeah, they came back at 75,000. And yes, my numbers were around 72, but I'm not going to squabble over $3,000 because we're buy and hold. We'll make that money back up. So I said, okay, that's fine. Or well, Scott and I decided that was fine. And we obviously went and looked at the house, because when we're making offers off the MLS, it is purely based on numbers, what the description is, and whatever pictures they show. And we make an offer, and we work with a real estate agent who understands the investment market, and she is willing to put in offers sight unseen, but the contingency is that we have to do a satisfactory walkthrough. So once an offer is made and accepted, then we do a walkthrough. We did our walkthrough. We were happy. The tenant had two dogs, and I think a son living with her, and the place was spotless, and she kept it very clean. And she was on her second, well, it was coming up to her, she had signed a 2-year lease. So when we bought it, 1 year was up. And so she's on her second year right now. But she wants to, as far as I know, she wants to stay there. So we had already had a private lender set up for the property. So when we bought the property, the lien was put on already, and all that was taken care of through the title company. And we had the same. So this private lender, we actually are not paying out at all, because they only had 55,000 of the 75. So, and this private lender does not want the
Interest.
yeah, she doesn't want to be paid out, because if they're paid out, they have to pay taxes on it, and she doesn't need the money right now. So we just roll that over, and so every year it gets recalculated, and her interest is based on that new
Loan amount.
loan amount. So basically, we calculated all that out and say, after 3 years, we will owe you this much money. So that's what she signed for. So we actually have we bought that property. We have a private lender. We have, we had to pay 20,000 out of our own pocket for it, but we have a private lender that's has 55,000 and we're not paying anything out. So, and
And
eventually, I think she's going to want to stay on with us. And so we'll keep rolling that over until it hits 75,000. Once it hits 75,000, because we don't want to go too far over, we don't want to go too high on the loan to value. So at that point, we can probably reassess what the property is worth and see where we're at loan to value wise. So we'd like to keep it around 70% loan to value. So once she gets up to 70%, then we'll probably discuss paying her out. And then, or investing into another property or something like that.
yeah, that's awesome. So this house was occupied. So the day you closed, it was cash flowing. There wasn't deferred maintenance or anything. Uh,
Nope.
There was a couple of things, but it's minor. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so awesome. So totally different type of deal. What was
Yeah.
the ARV on this house? You purchased it for 75. What was the ARV from your realtor?
Really?
Off,
Was that 110?
yes. Yeah.
Sounds
110,
right. Yeah.
105.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you bought the property, you had ballpark $35,000 in equity in that
Yeah.
property,
Yeah.
right? Which I know for a lot of people, they think, well, how is that possible? But it always goes back to the what's the quote? Price is what you pay, value is what you get, right? And that seller just needed rid of the property. I think it was a partnership that
Hey,
went bad, something like that, right?
Or like in Florida or something.
Georgia.
Georgia.
They're in
Yeah.
Georgia.
So it just goes to show that even a property listed on the MLS, you can get a good deal, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
You can buy properties under what they're valued at. So I thought those two deals compared to each other are a really interesting comparison. Um, but okay, so how about the second deal? Would you do that deal again?
Oh, yeah.
Oh
Right.
yeah, every day of the week, huh?
Yeah. 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 I'm
Yes.
looking for more of those.
Yeah.
All right, sharp.
Yeah.
Um, let's see, a couple questions on here. Georgia asked, is it always best to work with a general contractor on your rehabs or for these projects, or do you subcontract out the work yourself?
I mean, my opinion is you're probably subcontracting the work out yourself because the general contractor is going to cost more. Um, find a quality handyman that can do most anything, um, because they're going to be cheaper than hiring your top licensed contractors. And you're going to be, I mean, this is the way I look at it. Well, what we've learned, is that you 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 got to kind of compare quality with price a little bit. With a rental property, you're not going to be having your licensed contractors going in there and doing everything. You're going to be having, like I said, your handyman, but the handyman, also is, you get what you pay for. So the first contractor that we had on the Bolton house, he was cheaper than the second one we have, but there was a reason why he was cheaper. It was a lot more babysitting. I felt like I had to go there every day to make sure he was doing things right. Even when I would tell him where we wanted things, they didn't end up where we wanted them. Um, and making sure stuff was getting done. Um, but the second one, we we're paying a little bit more. However, I pretty much just give him the keys to the house and a list of things to do, and he does it. And I stopped by there once a week, maybe if he asks me. But it's a lot less babysitting. So I think you do get what what you pay for.
Yeah.
I will just say that one of the things we ran into in that on the first house, the full rehab, is learning some interesting things when utilities are off for a long period of time. It's not just a matter of calling and they turn them on. They're like, oh, well, you're going to have to get, these inspections done before we're willing to turn things on. And so that again added another twist to that rehab.
Yeah, they are not real easy going or easy to work with to get those utilities on.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, especially when they've been off for 12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
All right. Another question from Brent was, how are you finding deals without the MLS? So I think he asked that before you shared.
yeah.
So what are some ways you guys have tried to find deals?
Certainly given our names to wholesalers that we meet at GDREIA and other real estate investing meetings.
And we get a lot of calls from people wanting to buy our properties now.
Yeah.
And if they call, I used to get like, like anybody upset about it, but I say, well, I don't sell, but I do buy. Do you have any properties you want to sell? Most of them is just, they're like, nope, sorry, and they hang up. But other ones will ask, are you an investor? Where do you buy? And so I will then give them a list of zip codes that we like to buy in or that we look at, and say, send anything my way, and I give them my email address, and I say, send me anything that you get under contract, and I'll be happy to take a look at it. So, it's pretty much, I guess, looking on the MLS and then wholesalers right now. I do, I try to hand out cards and talk to people. We have signs on our cars, which didn't do anything for the first, I don't know, 6 months that we had them on. But then all of a sudden, in the last couple of months, I've had multiple people ask me about it. They're like, "Oh, you buy houses?" And some people are looking to rent, and some people are looking to sell. And so been able to make a few contacts that way. At this point, we haven't bought anything from anybody yet, from that, but at least people are talking to us.
Yeah. And I think the signs on my car have actually worked more towards giving me investor contacts. People are curious
That's
about,
awesome.
since this is not my full-time job, people are asking me about that. And so I mean, which, you know what, I'm fine with both of those.
Yeah.
I mean,
Heck yeah. And anything that leads to that initial conversation with a potential lender, right, is a
yeah.
good thing.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, Elias and I were just talking about truck signs recently, and I said, yeah, they don't work until they do, right? There's no like one call a month. It's who knows, you feel like it's worthless having it on, and then all of a sudden you get a deal and you're like, that was the greatest $15 I've ever
Yeah.
spent, right? So
Yeah.
um that's just the way it works. So
Yep.
Georgia has another question. Other than an electrician, plumber, roofer, and handyman, were there other like people you looked for, other types of contractors you looked for?
That probably,
Well,
well,
the HVAC.
HVAC, yes, HVAC. a quality HVAC guy that can install for cheaper, because it's probably same as roofing in a way. You're going to get a wide variety of of quotes. Some might be, somebody might give you a quote for 5,000, another one will be 15, and it's like, how do you go from 5 to 15? But
Yeah.
I would say like HVAC, you know, I think all of your people, all the people on your team, if you listen to Bigger Pockets, they talk about building a team, and ask them if they own rental property themselves. Because if they do, then they kind of understand the numbers and they understand what you're trying to do. And that, um, you know, although, like I said before, the cheapest isn't always the best, but they understand that you have a budget you need to work within in order to cash flow the property. um, or at least ask them, do they work for other
Investors.
yeah, other real estate investors. So because if they do, then they're going to understand that. If they just pretty much do residential homes, owner occupied, then they're probably going to be a little bit higher priced.
I think that was a very kind way to put it, Jim. Probably a little higher price. They're definitely going to be higher price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other questions anybody has? Now's your chance. I want to, be true to everybody's time here tonight. And any other questions anybody'd like to know about? You can just unmute and ask, or you can throw it in the chat if you want.
I have a question. So, are there some commonly known or commonly used hard money lenders if you don't know anybody that just has thousands of dollars to lend to you?
So there are hard money lenders. There's multiple hard money lenders in GDREIA who are vendor members. Rob is one. What is it? I'm drawing a blank on names right now, but Rob's one, and
Yeah.
JM Real Estate Capital.
J
Okay.
Real Estate
And
Capital.
Steve
And
Cartwright.
Steven Cartwright is one.
And I think we got a couple of new guys that are doing financing specifically for investors, Angel Oak and Edge Home Finance.
Okay. Sounds good. So yeah, if you're
Those are Camille. I think that was Camille, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yes.
Those are all on the website at GDREIA.com. There's a tab just for vendors. You can find
Okay.
all of them there with their contact info.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, with the hard money lender, it's a simpler process because they're just lending based on the asset normally, and a little bit based on you as a borrower, but primarily the asset. So you're going to pay, more points and a higher interest rate, and usually it's a shorter term loan. If you're willing to put in the work to find the private lender, then you'll get no points and lower interest and longer term loans. So however you can fund the deal, right? If you have a great deal, whatever funding works. But if you put in that extra effort to find the private lender, you're going to make a lot more money, especially long term.
So, are there some commonly known or commonly used private lenders?
No, a private lender, by definition, they don't have a business lending money. They are comparing lending money to us. They're comparing that to other things like the stock market or a CD, or usually they're just comparing different investments. And like I think it was Scott said, most private lenders initially they don't know they can be a private lender. They don't know they can lend on real estate. So there's kind of an educational process to informing them of how they can be a private lender in our deals, along with what the benefits are. And interestingly, so when an individual meets with, let's say, a financial planner, and the financial planner tells them, here's the benchmarks you should shoot for, and you should diversify your portfolio, and in retirement, 4% is really good benchmark to hit, and maybe you crossed your portfolio stocks and bonds, you may hope to get 8 or 9 annually, right? Those are just kind of standard numbers. Well, what we offer really fits what their financial planner is already telling them. They just don't know that lending in real estate is an option. So once we go through that process of informing them or educating them on how they can be a lender and what the benefits are, it perfectly fits what they're already looking for and what their financial planner is telling them. There's just more work on the front end because you have to go through that process of explaining it to them. So,
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, our third private lender, that, you know, he had CDs, and they came to maturity, and he was going to put them back in CDs again at 4%. We said, well, you know what? We have an opportunity to get 6%.
was that a hard sell, Scott? If he was excited
That
for
was
4
Jim
and you
selling
were
it,
willing to
yeah.
pay 6?
No, I like 4.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very easy sell, right?
Yeah, he was he liked to roll money back into CDs, and he was a friend of mine, and someone that I see several days a week. And he knew what I was doing because I would talk to him about it. But he didn't know he could be a lender, and like he was going to roll his money over into another CD, and he was like, "Oh, CDs are up right now. I can get 5.1%," and I'm like, "I'll give you 6%." And I said, "Why don't you just invest with me?" And so he did, and that was like he didn't. I was like, "What do you want to know?" Like, we didn't really because I've known him so long. It was just he trusted me, and I gave him all the paperwork to look over, and so he may have looked it over, but I think he was fine with it because he's known me for so long.
Yeah, awesome. And does this guy have a chauffeur, or drive a Bentley, or just, an everyday guy?
No, just just an everyday guy,
Honda Civic kind of guy.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep,
Yeah.
I think Honda Civic's almost gonna hit 300,000 miles. So
Yeah, that's a perfect example of a typical private lender. That's great.
yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on. Jim and Scott, thank you for taking the time to do it. I hope everybody else benefited from just hearing their story and a couple of their deals and what they're doing. Kimberly says thank you very much. And I know people have to be thinking about, what you've said and how they can do something similar. Jim and Scott, I know, are great guys and always willing to talk. So if you catch them at a general meeting or subgroup meeting, don't hesitate to go up and talk to them and ask them any other questions you have. All right. So,
And just put a plug in here for Chad. If you want more understanding of private lending, I would highly recommend his course. Scott and I have both gone through it and gotten substantial information about it, and it's great because I think I went through it a year ago, but every now and then you still have access to his online portion of the course, and I'll go back and rewatch the videos and pull information off. So it's a great investment in your business.
awesome. Appreciate that, Jim.
Mhm.
So, yeah, if anybody has questions about how that works or what the course covers, anything like that, glad to answer any questions on that as well. So I want to see you guys succeed. I'd love to have more of you on these meetings, sharing the deals you're doing, right? I think it's exciting when we see GDREIA members excelling and having success. So thank you again, Jim and Scott. Thank you, everybody else, for attending. And we'll catch you next month on the third Monday. We're going to have another GDREIA member, actually, who we just talked about, Stephen Cartwright, talk about how to work with his lending program with hard money. So I hope you guys can join us for that. All right. And then Shay or Kimberly should send out a recording of this too, if you want to share that with anybody who couldn't attend. So, all right. Appreciate everybody. Hope you have a great evening, and we'll catch you next month. We are adding new episodes every week, so make sure and subscribe and check out all of our content at truewealthinvestors.com.